Tolvanen, who is a former police crime commissioner who was the head of the Helsinki Police Violent Crime Unit and a former member of parliament. Tolvanen was framing the well-known Finnish killer Sanna Sillanpää in a mental hospital about which I have my own article and which I will tell a little about in connection with this case. Kari Tolvanen, who was deliberately pulling the criminal investigation of the Sanna Sillanpää case away from the leaders of the Nokia mobile phone company and the Finnish medical psychiatry, whose activities are based on the diaries of Turku University skull shrink Hannu Lauma about the enemy without motives. Psychiatry that worked in the background of Sillanpää, whose core theme is to make their victims believe that they have to eat hard drugs that decrease the brain functions of these patients, which takes away all logic and rationality from their behavior, making them extremely prone to all impulsive behavior, such as in the case of Sillanpää, killing completely unknown persons without real motives. In my criminal investigations, Sillanpää has apparently stepped on the toes of Nokia's influential leaders, who have extremely good relations with the president of the Finland, Sauli Niinisto, who was an up-and-coming politician at the time, and who therefore owns these state institutions, such as inpatient psychiatry, which needs these people like Sanna Sillanpää for mental hospitals, whose patients appear at the University of Turku's Jarmo in Hietala and Walter Major Helena's illegal medical studies, where they study the effect of various chemical compounds on the brains of these human rats. They guess the mechanisms of medically non-existent and imaginary diseases and refute previous guesses. If we look at the motives of the Sillanpää case again, which are not there, but for the medical research led by the University of Turku, this case fits like a nose to the head and a fist to the eye. Together with psychiatry, it is because they need these motiveless killers that they can buy in terms of money cheaply from the country's corrupt courts with their own expert opinions based onto the deliberate misinterpretations of medically non-existent and imaginary diseases with which these human rats can be bought as a basis for their own academic careers and salary payments that allow these researchers to practice their own professional excellence at the expense of the freedom and health of these cases staged in the courts, who believe these false expert statements like witches from the Middle Ages. These human rats of medicine staged in the courts are bound by the laws of a democratic state to forced treatments based on medically non-existent and imaginary diseases, which means that Jarmo Hietala and Walter Major Helena can research with the help of these patients whatever they want to research in the name of medicine, because all illegalities are refuted by the patients, and in these extremely closed institutions, they are transformed into symptoms of the patient's imaginary disease and into their characteristic delusions. When the highly trained doctors of a prestigious university are confronted with their own medical researches that guarantee their academic careers, while on the other side is a citizen who has been falsely convicted as mentally ill in the courts, who has been deprived of his right to self-determination and is not subjected to forced treatment by an imaginary based on a disease that would seem to be the holy grail for medical researchers. This activity where imaginary diseases are created for the patients and everything they say to the researchers are only delusions characteristic of an imaginary disease, is based on the special expertise of the University of Turku, i.e. misinterpretations of statistics, and by deliberately utilizing it, which is Hasse Karlsson's core expertise when he imitates the high virus in his own research projects by scrolling the physiological diseases of cancer from the depression of an autumn day on our suffering problem citizens where they unfortunately die. One of his study, Hasse Karlsson has studied the changes in brain structures in a patient who is almost certainly from a human rat farm managed by the University of Turku, bound by extremely dictatorial laws regarding forced treatments for a disease that is medically non-existent and imaginary. So in the name of it, Karlsson can research whatever he wants to research in the name of medicine. It is a big question mark how much physical and mental violence is used on these patients in these institutions, in terms of how voluntarily they participate in these studies. because these extremely closed institutions, represented by VTH's human rat farms, within their walls, human life can be made so repugnant that these patients may agree to these tests of their own free will after being roped in the restraint cars for days. I have filed a criminal complaint against Hasse Karlsson, the evil that should have rested in the Nazi bunkers to the Finnish police, which they do nothing about it. But what kind of evil would it be that would easily fall? This only proves what the role of the Finnish police has become in Finland, i.e. covering up the crimes of decision-makers and high-ranking authorities, taking advantage of their own credibility in the eyes of the people by pulling criminal investigations in the wrong direction, which saves other authorities such as medical psychiatry and their illegals' actions with their patients. These human rats of medicine like Sanna Sillanpää are, in other words, more valuable than gold in terms of weight to the illegal medical research of the University of Turku, and is the main reason why Mikael Lilius has landed in Finland with private medical services, of which he himself manages the largest company, Mihiläinen. Researchers from Turku University those carry out these illegal medical researches at the expense of the freedom and health of these staged human rats, whose recruitment process from the free side of our society is, however, extremely expensive, measured in the suffering of the families of all the bystander victims whom they take away as their last act, defending against this official corruption that wants to subjugate these citizens as human rats for medicine. Of course, this activity does not weigh at all on the conscience of the professors of this University of Turku, Hannu Lauma, Hasse Karlsson, Chiaki Kakila, Jarmo Hayatala, Raimo Salakangas, Major Helena Walter plus Jana Suvisaari and Jesper Ekelund, even though they are advertised on the facades of the University of Turku like Christmas throughout the year, which covers up to effectively all the illegal activities they do in the name of science, especially in the name of medicine, with the staged citizens of our country. Kari Tolvanen's action as a high-ranking official of the Finnish government in this case was to pull the criminal investigation away from other authorities, such as psychiatry, whose work is already well visible in Finland, where it is involved in all cases in Finland where a problem citizen decides to kill bystanders or themselves under heavy pressure from the authorities, where they sometimes incite these victims of psychiatry for mass killing projects even by utilizing the covert activities of the police, which in my opinion should be quite illegal activity from the police,